Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fanatic Breakdown Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Higgins, with all the latest NFL and NBA news. Today, it's all NFL, but after week one, I have no shortage of NFL news. Without further ado, let's hop into it. Alright, first game on the list, Bills versus Rams. The Buffalo Bills clobbered the Los Angeles Rams 31-10. Matthew Stafford completely crapped the bed, throwing 3 interceptions and just 1 touchdown. And I don't even think the game score completely tells the story. It was Bills all the way after halftime. If Isaiah McKenzie and Jamison Crowder wouldn't have lathered dish soap on their hands, dropping catches that got intercepted, and Zach Moss and James Cook wouldn't have played hot potato with the football, fumbling it away, the score would have been much higher. Guess what? Josh Allen was the Bills' leading rusher with 56 yards and a rushing score. He did everything from scrambling, throwing on the run, and one very impressive deep ball to Stephon Diggs that he walked in for a touchdown. Speaking of Diggs, he made Jalen Ramsey look like the Super Bowl version of Eli Apple, as Diggs caught 8 passes for 122 yards and a touchdown. Cooper Kupp was also very good, with 13 receptions for 128 yards and 1 touchdown. But without a win, those are just empty stats. Also, in Von Miller's return to LA, he sacked Stafford twice, proving his worth. Also, Josh Allen stiff-armed a guy all the way into the parking lot. I just thought that was worth mentioning. Also, there was this graphic that popped up on my screen of Josh Allen that's probably not worth mentioning, but it said Josh Allen, the only quarterback in NFL history. And if I'm correct, I've seen many quarterbacks play, but that might have been my imagination playing tricks on me. So Josh Allen, the only quarterback in NFL history. Now I've got Eagles versus Lions. The Eagles squeaked out the dub against the Lions roster that still has some holes in it. I did not expect this game to be as close as it was. It ended up being 38-35. Jalen Hurts was nothing spectacular, but he got the job done. It was very apparent A.J. Brown is going to be a huge piece of their offense, with 10 catches on 155 yards. He didn't get in the end zone, but no Eagles receiver did. They scored on the ground 4 times with 4 different players, one with Miles Sanders, Jalen Hurts, Kenneth Gainwell, and finally Boston Scott. For the Lions, DeAndre Swift had a field day with 15 rushes, 144 yards, and a touchdown, averaging 9.6 yards per attempt. Other than that, Jared Goff was okay, but just wasn't good enough to get the job done. After the game, it was revealed that Eagles defensive end Derek Barnett tore his ACL and will miss the rest of the year. Bears versus 49ers. The Bears ended up upsetting the 49ers in a game that I expected the 49ers to cakewalk through. 19-10 with, I would say, both quarterbacks in Justin Fields and Trey Lance underperforming, and it's very apparent that they both still need time to develop. Lance, I'd say more so, with just 164 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. He did rush for a few yards, but he threw under 50% though, and a few quarterbacks did, but I'd say with just 164 yards, that's very apparent. He needs to work on that. Fields also threw under 50% and just 121 yards, but he did throw 2 touchdowns and just 1 interception. On the ground for the Bears, with just 9 carries, Khalil Herbert proved his worth with just 45 yards, but on 9 carries, that's pretty solid, and a touchdown. While his fellow Bears running back David Montgomery bombed with just 26 yards and 8 more carries than Herbert. In Dante Pettis' revenge game against the 49ers, he had just 1 catch, but it was a 51-yard rocket for a touchdown. While Deebo Samuel for the 49ers was largely a non-factor in the passing game, with just 2 catches for 14 yards, he rushed for 52 yards and a touchdown. Sadly for the 49ers, starting running back Elijah Mitchell is expected to miss a few weeks at least with a knee injury. Steelers versus Bengals. The Steelers outlasted the Bengals to win 23-20. Certified cigar smoker Joe Burrow turned the ball over a total of 5 times and had a hard time putting a drive together. Jamar Chase was still remarkable with 10 catches for 129 yards and a score, even with a lackluster game from his signal caller. Mitch Trubisky played the game manager role well, throwing for almost 200 yards and a touchdown. And Deontay Johnson had an insane sideline catch that ended up in a missed field goal. Neither kicker was great. Evan McPherson shanked a chip shot to win the game, but in his defense, the snap was a bit high. Both Najee Harris and TJ Watt left the game and did not return for the Steelers, but Najee isn't expected to miss any time, while TJ will miss multiple weeks. Bengals receiver T. Higgins also suffered a concussion, and I'm not sure if he'll miss time from this or not. Dolphins versus Patriots. The Dolphins showed no mercy against the Pats, beating them 20-7. Tua was nothing crazy, but managed the game well, and got it to his playmakers, I'll give him that, aka Tyreek Hill, who had 8 catches for 94 yards. And apparently the Patriots forgot about Jalen Waddle, who had 4 catches for 69 yards and a touchdown, and almost a 40-yard catch for a touchdown. Mac Jones was largely disappointing with multiple miscommunications with his teammates, but after the game it was revealed he was dealing with back spasms, which could be the culprit. But if you have Joe Judge and Matt Patricia calling your plays, it is very possible that could be the issue. But I will give props to the Dolphins defense for forcing turnovers, and head coach Mike McDaniel, who I thought did very well in his debut as a head coach. Now for Browns versus Panthers. The Browns shocked the Panthers, winning 26-24. Baker Mayfield looked very sloppy in the first half of his revenge game, but turned up in the fourth quarter to take a lead. But some kicker named Cade York hit the last-second 50-yard field goal to win it. Good news for the Panthers is Christian McCaffrey didn't get hurt. Bad news is he sucked, rushing for just 30 yards, and was even worse receiving with just 24 yards. He did rush for a touchdown just to make some fantasy managers happy. Robbie Anderson caught 5 passes for 102 yards and a touchdown. Mind you, this is the same guy who called Baker trash. Ironic. But the Browns' passing attack was less than good, but both running backs were great. As always, Nick Chubb rushed for 141 yards and Kareem Hunt scored twice. Barely squeaking the Browns past the Panthers. Colts v. Texans now. Now for the most underwhelming game of the week. In his first game as a Colt, Matt Ryan did what he's best at. Choking. I know, shocker, right? Somehow, he found a way to tie with the Texans. The Texans. That's right. Nobody scored in overtime, leaving the game at 20-20 final score. In Ryan's first game as a Colt, he was really nothing special, throwing 352 yards and a 1-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. But he made Michael Pittman look like Devontae Adams with 9 catches, 121 yards, and 1 touchdown. Jonathan Taylor proved he is one of the best running backs in the league, with 161 rushing yards and a touchdown with 14 through the air. Davis Mills looked better than Matt Ryan, throwing 240 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, and for some reason, Rex Burkhead had more carries than rookie Dameon Pierce. But maybe they thought he would play better or something, I don't know. O.J. Howard caught 2 touchdowns on 2 receptions for the Texans. But by far my favorite part of this, or the NFL this week, is that every AFC South team went winless and 2 of them played each other. Also, I just got news the Colts waived kicker Rodrigo Blankenship after a poor performance, which actually came as a surprise to me. I know he did miss the game-winning kick. He's a solid kicker, but we'll see where he ends up after this. Saints versus Falcons. Hey, guess what? The Falcons choked again. I bet all Falcons coaches and players had 28-3 ringing in their ears, as well as, "He's in! Patriots win the Super Bowl!" And yes, I have that memorized. Of course I do. But overall, Marcus Mariota played a pretty solid game, throwing for 215 yards and rushing for 72 and a touchdown. Rookie wide receiver Drake London was their leading receiver with 5 catches, 74 yards, which doesn't come as a surprise to me, with Calvin Ridley out for the entire year, and I don't know what the heck happened to Kyle Pitts out there. He was garbage. But for the Saints, Alvin Kamara was also garbage. But Swiss Army knife Taysom Hill rushed for 81 yards and a touchdown out of nowhere. Jarvis Landry kind of flew under the radar this week, but had 7 catches and 114 yards. And Mike Thomas had 5 catches, 52 yards, and 2 touchdowns. 27-26 final score. Ravens versus Jets. Obviously, we all know who's going to win this game just by the 2 teams that are in it. But the Ravens stomped the Jets 24-9. I expected this especially because Zach Wilson didn't play. We all know Lamar Jackson can run, but man, he said, "Man, you should see me throw too. It's great." Yeah, it certainly is. He threw 3 touchdowns and 213 yards with just 1 interception on the day. For the Jets, neither Michael Carter or Breece Hall could find their footing and break for a big gain on the ground. Joe Flacco was okay. He threw for over 300 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 pick. Garrett Wilson was solid in his rookie Jets debut with 4 catches, 52 yards, and he will only get better after the other Wilson gets back. Vikings versus Packers. Vikings didn't even give the Pack a chance, beating them 23-7. Aaron Rodgers looked so annoyed on the sideline all game, mostly because his team sucked. Rookie receiver Christian Watson dropped an easy 70-yard bomb that would have been a touchdown. It's made even worse by the fact he was wide open. It says a lot about their leading receiver was running back A.J. Dillon with just 46 yards through the air. You think Rodgers misses Davante Adams yet? On the other sideline, Justin Jefferson had a field day with 9 catches, 184 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Captain Kirk Cousins threw 277 yards, 2 touchdowns, both of them to, guess who, Justin Jefferson. It got so bad, Aaron Rodgers actually got taken out of the game in favor of Jordan Love. All right, now for the Washington Commanders versus the Jaguars. This game ended up being much closer than I originally thought it would be. The Commanders took the dub 28-22. I thought they were going to take it much easier than this. But the Jaguars did put up a fight. Carson Wentz, even with throwing 4 touchdowns, I would say was disappointing. Throwing 2 interceptions, one was an unforced error that got picked by Tyson Campbell. The other was batted down at the line of scrimmage that landed in the hands of first overall pick Trayvon Walker, which really wasn't Carson's fault. Walker also sacked Wentz once, proving in his debut why he went first overall. Trevor Lawrence showed promise, but threw a pass that got intercepted on their final drive with a chance to win the game. Christian Kirk was great in his Jaguars debut with 6 catches, 117 yards. For the Commanders, I think rookie Jahan Dotson was the unsung hero of this game, with 3 catches for 40 yards, but 2 of those catches were touchdowns. Right, now this is where we get crazy. Giants versus Titans. The Giants shocked the world by beating the Titans 21-20. For the Titans, Randy Bullock had a chance to hit the game-winning field goal but came up empty. Surprisingly, Derrick Henry was largely a non-factor, rushing for just 82 yards on 21 carries. Which, it's good, but those are chump numbers for Henry. But on the other side, Saquon Barkley had a masterpiece of a game with 164 yards and a touchdown on just 18 carries, while catching 6 passes out of the backfield for 30 yards. Neither quarterback was great, and Daniel Jones actually played worse than Tannehill, but still got by long enough to win. Chargers versus Raiders now. The Chargers outlasted the Raiders 24-19. Justin Herbert was phenomenal, throwing 279 yards and 3 touchdowns, with tremendous efficiency. I can't say the same for Derek Carr, though. He did throw 2 touchdowns, but also 3 interceptions. Davante Adams was still really good, though, with 10 catches, 141 yards, and a score. The Chargers sacked Derek Carr 6 times, 3 of those from newcomer Khalil Mack. This new and improved defense already looked great Sunday, and they will only get better with the return of J.C. Jackson. In the middle of the game, Keenan Allen tweaked his hamstring and is unlikely to play Thursday night against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now I got Chiefs versus Cardinals. The Chiefs did not let up against the Cardinals, destroying them 44-21. Patrick Mahomes proved he doesn't need Tyreek Hill, throwing 360 yards and 5 touchdowns. As always, Travis Kelce was great, with 8 receptions, 121 yards, and a touchdown. Juju Smith-Schuster was also good in his first game in a Chiefs jersey, catching 6 passes for 79 yards. I would say Kyler Murray was lackluster, with under 200 yards passing and 29 yards on the ground, but he did throw 2 touchdowns, if that means anything to you. Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker left mid-game with an injury. In a surprising act, safety Justin Reed took over kicking duties and nailed an extra point. Sadly, Chiefs rookie first-round corner Trent McDuffie has been placed on injured reserve and will miss most of the season. Alright, Buccaneers versus Cowboys. The Buccaneers beat the Cowboys 19-3 in a largely disappointing game. The big storyline right now is a fractured thumb sustained by Cowboys starting quarterback Dak Prescott. He will not be placed on injured reserve, but is expected to miss 6 to 8 weeks. And the thing that really disgusts me is that as he was jogging off the field, Cowboys fans literally started throwing trash at him, which is uncalled for. Cooper Rush is the likely starter if a trade does not occur for a different quarterback. Tom Brady got bailed by his defense after a below-average performance for old Tommy Boy, throwing just 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Old Thunder Thighs Leonard Fournette was by far the best player on either side. He rushed for 127 yards on 21 carries. But sadly, the Cowboys season is basically over, not even a full game of football into the season. Also, Bucks wide receiver Chris Godwin is expected to miss a few weeks with a hamstring strain. Denver Broncos versus Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks stunned everybody, beating the Broncos 17-16. Russell Wilson's revenge game did not go according to plan, as he threw just one touchdown in which he actually underthrew and got bailed by Jerry Jeudy's craftiness. Both Broncos running backs Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams fumbled on the goal line, halting scoring drives. But Seahawks quarterback Geno Smith played the Broncos defense like a violin, throwing 195 yards and 2 touchdowns. Those stats don't seem crazy, but if you watched the game, you would have seen how fundamentally sound Geno played. A controversial coaching decision was made by Broncos coach Nathaniel Hackett to take Russell Wilson out of the game on a 4th and 5 and send out Brandon McManus for the longest field goal of his career. Spoiler alert, he missed it. Also, star Seahawks safety Jamal Adams left the game with an, and I quote, significant injury, whatever the heck that's supposed to mean. Alright, something I'm going to do every week of the NFL season is I'm going to pick a player I didn't expect to play as well as they did, and a player I think largely underperformed. The guy I feel overperformed is the previously mentioned Jahan Dotson for the Washington Commanders. And I know, three catches is not remarkable by any means, but 2 scores, and one of them was clutch enough to win the game, it's just too good to overlook for me. My underperforming player is another receiver. I picked the Eagles wide receiver Devonta Smith, who ended with 0 catches, 0 yards, and I really hope I don't need to explain why I picked this one for you. Alright, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. As always, I'll be back next week with more news from NFL Week 2. With that said, I'm your host, Chris Ziggins. This has been Fanatic Breakdown.